Hello YouTube, I'm back with another video. Now this is one of the props or statues that I built for my cemetery display last year for 2021. And I had quite a few people ask me about this one, far as, you know, once I was done with it, would I either sell it, would I build them one, or what they could do to build one. So I'm going to make a video showing the process that I do to make this one. And I'll list off, you know, the parts and the things that I'm using. So this way, if this is something you wanted to do, build something like this for your cemetery display, to, you know, really add that extra detail to your, you know, your display that you have. This is not a hard thing to make. It's pretty easy. Everything is all basic stuff, nothing high tech. So I hope you stick around and enjoy this video. Okay, pretty much for this project is really just kind of what you see here. Maybe just a couple little miscellaneous items after this, depending on what you want to go with. I usually go online and try to find, like, I'll type in cemetery statues or something like that and try to find one that I think is, you know, kind of cool looking, and that's kind of what I kind of go with. I found one that I'm going to use for this one. But pretty much all I really do is use one of these big thick blocks of foam. If you live anywhere close to a Tractor Supply or some companies that sell implements, they ship their implements with these blocks in there, and a lot of times you can get them for free. Just some regular pink 2-inch foam. Like I said, I don't really do the dry lock thing. I use just tile mortar. Any kind of latex paint. It doesn't have to be gray. It could be white, blue, purple. It doesn't matter, because you're going to be repainting it anyway, so that doesn't really matter the color, but this definitely has to be a latex paint. Some form of fabric. It can't be anything that's plastic. It can't be a tarp. It can't be anything that's a vinyl base. It has to be able to absorb the paint. You know, it's got to be absorbent. You know, kind of like soaking up. You know, soaking up water essentially. So it has to be a fabric of some kind, a sheet, a painter's drop cloth. You know, things like that work best. And then I use electrical conduit. I don't really like using PVC too much because it can still flex and move, you know, on you, especially if it gets windy, where electrical metal conduit will stay nice and rigid, and that's what I use for the main portion of the skeleton. But if, say, I'm going to make an arm raised up or something like that, then I might switch to PVC just for that portion only, or I might weld it all together and make my armature out of all metal, so this way it makes it more rigid. But pretty much what you see here is pretty much all you really need to do this project, so I'm going to get started and show you the steps I'm going to do. One of the first things is figuring out how to do your pillar. I'm going to do a style pillar where I'm going to put that piece on top. I'm going to let it overhang a little bit, so it's going to have like a little bit of like an overhang a little bit, and then I'll add a strip on the bottom here, so this way it kind of looks like an actual pillar kind of shape, where it actually is wide on the bottom, gets narrow, and gets wide again on the top. So that's how I'm going to do my pillar. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my foam, and I'm going to have to rip myself some strips for here. I'm going to only do it 1 inch. So I'm going to measure this out, and I'm going to cut that 1 inch figure all the way around. It'll actually be 2 inches overall, because I got an inch on either side. And then my 1 inch strips that I'm going to put down here. So I'm going to go ahead and get all those cut, get those glued on here. Once I get those on here, then I'll start figuring out where my skeleton is going to sit. And then once I get that figured out, then I'll start figuring out where I'm going to put my poles, so I can start supporting my my skeleton for the next steps and all that stuff. So let's get started. Sorry for the little background noise. It's a little warm here. I said I live in Florida, so it's not super cold out. So I have a little fan moving, so I hope you can still hear me good. This is where you're going to decide whereabouts you want your little 3-foot skeleton kind of go. If you want dead center or off to the side and all that. That's the finish kind of pinpoint where your piece of electrical conduit is going to go. I'm just going to pretty much put my, pretty much dead center. So this way it's easy, there's nothing to make it complicated. So, what I do is, you can't just take the conduit and brand it in there. You gotta either drill a hole, or sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a torch and I'll heat the end of the conduit up, and it'll just melt itself in there. But for this one, I'm just going to drill a hole because it's easier, safer, and less chance of burning myself. Okay. I want to find my center. Good have your dead perfect. That's good. It's close. Just something that looks like you made it to make it look centered in your display. So that's pretty much the center sauce. That's where I kind of want the skeleton itself to go. But then I think you got the thickness of the skeleton and all that. So pretty much, I'm pretty much going to put my piece of conduit pretty much right about there. That'll help me center my skeleton. Where it pretty much comes up towards the back of the neck here. So I'll put a zip tie up here where it's kind of behind the jaw so you don't see it. And now you put a couple of zip ties in the rib cage here so you don't see it. And then I'll probably, as long as I can make sure you don't see it, I might drill 2 holes here and put a zip tie through this portion so it's locked on there. But the next thing I gotta do is, I want to put them in like a, kind of like a frame for this now. I want the hands up here. I was thinking of that wrong. So hopefully it works. I'm going to use this. I'm going to keep the plastic up and see if I can slowly bend them up to where I want them to be. And I got to kind of do the same for the feet. Do yourself a favor. Buy the 3-foot ones that are a little bit better. Ones that work better. This is going to be a little bit of a pain to work with, but I already bought it, so I'm going for it. It doesn't matter if you put burn marks on it, once you paint it, you're not going to see it. And if you break it, I'll just caulk it on. There's one after that piece of tape. this part, you can see I have one zip tie already around this hand right here. I have a little hot glue on there just to kind of help make sure it doesn't move. And the other one, I drilled 2 holes, one here and here. Kind of bent my zip tie. I'm going to try to snake this through till it comes out the other side. You gotta be patient. You'll get it eventually. It's a little bit of a pain. There we go. Now, the purpose in that is so you can take zip tie, run it through here, go up underneath the rib cage, position the hand where you want it, and then just tighten it down. Now what that's going to do is that's going to make it to where those hands don't move. 2, you don't see any screws, fasteners. Unfortunately, I put that hot glue on there. Kind of, the hand tipped over when I was drilling the holes and got caught. Hot glue on it, but that'll come off. Okay. So at this point, you see I put about 4 or 5 zip ties on the back, a couple around the neck, a couple around the rib cage. I didn't do any down here because it feels all right. It's not gonna move too much. And a lot of times, some things I do is before I drape my stuff, I might put a bead of caulk down here, and what that caulk will do, that caulking will help it from also moving and twisting on that piece of conduit. And then on the feet are pretty much gonna be hidden anyways, so I run a screw on either heel. That just keeps them from sliding back and forth. So the next step is to start figuring out how I'm going to do the draping on it, and then we'll go from there. Alright, I'm working on the draping, and I did make a couple bad cuts. You can see I have these extra holes, but I've already draped it over it to see if I can make it work. So what I'm going to do is, for the way I'm doing this one, I'm just putting just a hole in the center, a small split. And what I do is I'm going to wrap that around the skeleton. I'm going to show you essentially what I got going on, and then obviously I have a secondary piece for the very top of her head. So, I'm going to try to turn it so you can see a little better as I put it on, but I also want to try to make sure I'm not in the way. Cover those big holes underneath. Like I said, once I do the mud up here, I'll probably take like a band or something, wrap it around here, so it kind of makes it a little more form fit. And this will come down, something like that, and then the rest will be turned off. Fold the edge over so it looks like a nice sewed edge. This will end up being up here. Because obviously once you get the paint and everything on it, you've got to form it a little bit. Just be kind of like this. Kind of break down. Obviously I'll cut this to where it fits a little bit better so I can get rid of thing in the back so it just looking good. But then again, people are not really going to be looking at the back too much as they're on the front. But you just always kind of push everything in a little bit, kind of give it a little more. And if you want to give it a little more poof, you just always take like a piece of foam, you just put the foam back here, and you cut it as a wedge, so it kind of fills it out a little bit, so it kind of like a draping kind of thing to do that. But that's kind of what I'm going to be going with. Next step is going to be to completely saturate the fabric, so with the paint and the mortar mix, and then drape everything over, and then it's going to just have to dry, and once it's dry, then we can start the next process. Okay, now this part, a lot of people make that stuff, they call it monster mud. So they usually use the latex paint, the dry lock, and joint compound, and they get it all mixed together in the whole 9 yards. I don't really like doing that. One, it wastes material because you have to mix it all together and you're really not going to use it all. Two, it's a lot more expensive buying all that extra stuff. Three, most joint compounds don't do too well with water or moisture. So what could potentially happen is if you don't get it really mixed really well, and you have an area where the joint compound is not really sealed very well, and this thing is out in the weather, a chunk could potentially possibly come off. So I don't really like using joint compound for anything that's obviously going to have any kind of water, moisture, or anything like that around it. So all I do is I will just pretty much dunk my draping in the paint only, get it saturated really good, drape it over my statue, and then I'll let it dry. And then if you've seen my previous videos, where what I do is I will paint it and I throw the mortar mix on top of it to give it my texture look, then that's how I do that. Because the paint by itself will hold this thing nice and rigid, and then once I paint it a second time with throwing all that stuff on there, and then one more coat after that to seal it, that's what made the other one nice and rigid. So I'm gonna do that. And then you also notice I have a different color piece of fabric. I just didn't like the fact that I made the extra holes in the other one. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to hide it really well, so I had an extra sheet, so I went ahead and just made another one real fast, the same as the other one, just without the extra holes. So I'm going to get started. I just dumped it in the paint. Make sure you get it nice and saturated. You want the whole sheet to be completely covered. And like I said, the other step is to make that stuff and mix it. Now everything's in that bucket. Now as long as you get the lid on there, you can seal it off and maybe use it later if you ever use it. But if for some reason you're not able to use it later, it might dry up on you and harden, and then it's no good, and you pretty much have to throw that entire thing away. So that's why I don't really like doing it that way. And if you're worried about your shop floor or your driveway, you definitely put a tarp down. I'm not too worried about my shop floor. It's a shop floor. I can get dirty. That's what it's there for. So I'm not worried about throwing the tarp down, but if I was worried about it, I would definitely put a tarp down. This is where you're going to get paint all over everything. Find my hole, and then also where my feet goes, I put a safety pin right here. That's what tells me where my feet are. So this way I can make sure I get right back to the exact same spot that I started it in. once this dries, you're not moving it. Okay, now with that paint being so thick, that's probably going to take, definitely a little bit of time to dry. I got that one on the back. Now, when that's dry enough, then I'll take it outside. I'll use my spray, or I'll spray the entire thing again with paint, get it nice and wet, and then I'll take my mix right there, and I'll do the same thing that I did to this, where I just throw it on there, and you see it gives it just a little bit of a rough, texture to it. It's not super aggressive. I mean, areas where it kind of clumped up, it got aggressive, but for the most part, it keeps it semi-consistent. And then after that dries a little, then I'll put one more coat of paint on it, and that'll help make sure that it seals the mortar mix. So this way it's all one neutral color again. And then I'll do the aging thing where I'll paint the greens and the blacks and the browns and all that stuff on there. And I'm trying to decide if I want to put some kind of like thing on the bottom there, so I'll think about that before I do the painting. But at this time, this is at this point, so once this dries, we will finish up the rest of it. Alright, well, it's the next day. I'm going to have to let it sit out here in the sun just a little bit and dry, being that I laid it on real heavy last night, and it was at nighttime. It was inside the shop. Obviously, it's not fully cured, and I really want it to be fully dry before I do the next part, because I'm using my sprayer and throwing the stuff on there. I don't want to disrupt the way I have the draping. I like the way the draping turned out, so I really don't want to mess with that. So the next step is to start painting everything and start finishing up. All right, it's pretty much dry. Added a little piece down there, little cheap Dollar Tree tombstone. I also put a little cross right here. We're gonna add that little extra, and you can see just from the paint by itself, you can see it's pretty rigid. And this is just from the paint. It's not anything else added to it at this time. So you can see just the paint by itself makes it pretty rigid. Now once I put another layer on here and I throw the thin set on it and all that, it's gonna make it a little bit more rigid after that point. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The first layer is just going to be a really heavy coat of the gray, and then I'll throw the mixture on it, and I'll give that just a little bit of time to dry, and then I'll put a second coat to make the surface uniform again, and then we'll do the aging portion. All right, we'll give this about 20 minutes, and then I'll take the leaf blower and I'll just blow off any excess loose material that's on there. And I'll do my second coat of gray. I said that's just to make the entire surface uniform again. So this way when you do the aging, you can get a better result with it. You see it just has just a nice textured stone look to it. So give that a little bit of time, and then we will come back out and do a little more painting on it. Just about ready to start the next step. I just want to bring up one thing. I kind of got a little carried away. When you have areas like right here in the skull that need to keep details, when you throw in, if you do it my way and you throw the stuff on it, try not to throw too much in these areas, because I got a little too much on the face and the hands right here and I lost a lot of these details. So I just came back with a paintbrush and a cup of water, because it is a latex paint, and just scraped some of the excess off and smooth it out, so I was able to keep some of the details. Just a little something you got to be cautious about. All Alright, now to start the aging or the creativity side of it, of doing your black, greens, browns, and trying to make it look like something that's been around for a long time. Alright, now for the greens. Alright, now to do some of the browns. Okay, at this point, you know, if you think, oh shoot, I got a little too heavy, or man, he got real heavy with the green and the browns. Usually what I do, if I do something like that where I think I got a little too much, I'll just mix up a little more gray and I'll just mist it over the whole thing, and it kind of gives it a little bit of a faded look, but you'll still see the colors. Okay, I guess you can say this is the finished product. I'm going to do a quick walk around. Now you see it is still a little on the dark side, but you leave this thing out in the sun, out in your front yard for a little bit, it's going to fade some, and it'll lighten up a little bit, and it'll actually, you know, look a little bit better. It's best to go just a little heavy than too light, so this way it'll still have a nice look after it's sat outside for a while. And then the one thing I was talking about with the details to be cautious of, as you can see where after I took the brush and I brushed it out, you can still see the finger marks, and it still looks like a stone. You can still see the face, the teeth, and the bones in the nose area, and it still has a stone look to it. So you gotta be cautious about that. The one thing I'm not too thrilled about is this section right here. I probably should have taken a piece of, you know, fabric, the same bed sheet, and maybe zip tied it up in here first. You know, soaked it, zip tied it up in here first, and let it hang. Then draped everything over and just let that hang down like this as a nice little, almost like cover, and then paint everything. So this way I didn't have this weird void here. I don't really like that void, so I'm gonna fix that. But for overall, I'd like to say I think it came out pretty good. And even for just being a bed sheet, and like I said, with just the paint alone, I mean, you see, I mean, it's gonna move some because, I mean, after all, it's not concrete. But I mean, I can pretty much practically push this prop over, and you see that the stuff, it's not moving that much. And it's gonna move a little, but not really that much. I mean, you can't change the shape of it. It's pretty fixed in the shape that it's gonna be in. So, but this is essentially my technique that I do for mine. Like I said, I try to find the easiest and the quickest way to build props and still get the look that I'm after. So this is my technique for it. There's all kinds of techniques out there. They're all great techniques. There's a lot of really good, talented people out there that make a lot of stuff like this. So, you know, not one way is better than the other way. This is just my way. But if you enjoyed this video, hit the notification button so the next time I do a video, you'll be alerted. If you did like it, you know, go ahead and share the video, like it, and thanks for watching.